Both of us worked in the same office. She, of the beautiful looks and a punctilious air about her, came from a middle-class background. Or so it seemed. I, the eternal bungler, was senior to her by a mere 2 days. Hers was a business-like attitude, with time seeming to flee from her. Perhaps her reticence was partly due to this overzealous importance she attached to time. I, the carefree, freak-out guy, could never reconcile myself to this serious psyche of hers. Her philosophy, as I gauged over the years, was probably that life was the greatest tragedy ever known to man. While I worked upon the easier, comfortable, happy-go-lucky theory of life, it wasn't surprising, therefore, that with two diametrically opposite views as ours, we never seemed to eye to eye. And literally, at that, our paths never crossed. Yet, I nurtured a strong desire to break the jinx. I distinctly remember the Thursday when she had gone on leave. Now was the golden opportunity to make her talk. I picked up the file she would clear the next day and inserted between the pages a note: "Heard melodies are still sweet. Those unheard are sweeter." Whether she was amused by this daredevilry of mine or simply relegated it to the dustbin disdainfully, I could not know. But what I knew was that I had failed in my first salvo to make her open her mouth. She continued to remain as tongue-tied as before. A few days later, I found myself tasting a dose of my own medicine. My empty tiffin box had an unusual leftover. It was a roll of paper, very much like a cigarette. On unrolling it, I found a typewritten message: "Seen countenances are bad enough. Those unseen must be worse." I could not help appreciating her sense of humor, though what she had conveyed, via the typewriter, seemed to put a full stop to the extended dimensions of my ego. I saw her suppressing a smile as I entered the next day. But the very next moment, she had changed back to her original self, wooden and unemotional as ever. I wondered at this enigma. My next plan was hatched over a couple of sleepless nights. Accordingly, I hid her vanity bag in my closet. No woman would bear the partition of her most prized possession, the make-up kit, I thought. She would come up to me and demand it, albeit harshly. Acceptable, since the challenge was to make her talk. Then I would ask her the reason for her reticence. But lunch hour did not find her talking to me. The castle I had built meticulously collapsed with a resounding thud. She never made any attempt to search for it, though she knew well that I had been behind its disappearance. And, as if to evoke a wave of sympathy in my pounding heart, she went without lunch. This is the height of vanity, I concluded. In retrospect, I cursed myself for having overplayed the jilted lover. My transfer order came just when I was acclimatized so well to the work. Yet, on second thoughts, this was a blessing in disguise, for I was on an emotional downswing now, having lost all faith in womanhood and finding life one big saga of fruitless endeavor. The misogynist in me could be pacified only by a change of place. It was only a few days before leaving that I overheard that she had been transferred to the same place where I was destined. I only prayed a new chapter would not begin in the old story, although the story hadn't ended on a savory note. As if by providence, I was destined to travel in the same train which took her. The fact was, the company had booked the tickets for both of us. The irony of the situation quite gripped me. Here I was wanting to run as far away from her as I could. Yet, looked away from her face, a face that had pride written all over it. While she, as usual, was lost in a world of her own, a world which had no place for emotions and sentiments. I finally alighted in a new place, where everyone seemed stranger than the other, but none stranger than the one alighting behind me. We walked in opposite directions into different worlds. Something made me stop and turn back. I did so, only to see her turn back at me at that very instant. Our eyes met. For the first and last time. The gleam in her watery eyes seemed to convey to me something undefinable and spoke out everything she did, or perhaps did not intend to during the past 3 years. The shrill whistle of a departing train reminded me that I, too, had to move on. I picked up my suitcase, it seemed heavier than before, and walked away. And then I thought, Maybe she was not free to fall in love as love and friendship both begins after meeting.